welcome back. This is BlueEcko, and this is going to be the next video in the series. Specifically, this one we're looking at the Airbus H160 from Hype Performance Group. But if you are considering getting the H145, or you already have the H145, and you want some additional information on keybinds, how the different systems interact with each other, and how this one flies a little bit different than other helicopters, this is going to be the video that you're going to want to see. So we're going to go through a series of different things. This may end up being a little bit longer video, but I'm going to break it up into chapters for you guys so that you can jump to the different portions. So we're going to start by talking about basic control setup, the basics that you need to fly this helicopter: cyclic, collective keybinds, your yaw or rudder pedals, and the most important one, your trim release. These binds are going to be uniform between the H160 and H145. So if you have either of those helicopters, this video will give you a good explanation between the two. We're in the cockpit of the H160 now, and in addition to talking about keybinds and what you should map your controls to for this, we're going to talk about how very similarly the H145 and the H160 use Airbus's Helionix system. And so the automated flight control system, the AFCS system, is what provides your 4-axis autopilot function. And we'll talk a little bit about how that works, how you will use your controls and the trim release to override that at different times. And then we'll go through specific examples of setting your heading bug, using your nav system, and talk about some recommended control binds for those as well. There are 4 basic control access keybinds that you're going to want to have set up. For each of these, there are 2 different Microsoft Flight Sim keybind or accesses that you can bind to, and we'll walk through each of those as we go through them. So cyclic pitch, this is going to be elevator axis or cyclic longitudinal axis. You have cyclic roll, which is ailerons axis or cyclic lateral axis. Your yaw pedals are going to be rudder axis or tail rotor axis. And then collective can be bound to throttle axis or collective axis. Since it's worth highlighting and they put the effort into this, I wanted to demonstrate 2 different animations that are present on the H160 as well. So I am raising and lowering the collective axis, and you can actually see the animation of the main rotor with that animation there. And additionally, if you haven't seen it, with your yaw axis, you actually have animation for the blades within the fenestron here. Aside from the 4 basic axes that we just talked about, the most important keybind that is here is the trim release. That, for the cyclic trim release, is bound to rotor trim reset in the MSFS bindings. And why it's the most important one with the automated flight control system, when you're pressing and holding the trim release, you're telling the system, hey, pause what you're doing. I want to have full control of what we're inputting into the helicopter. It's going to give you more control of the helicopter, and you're not going to feel like you're fighting against the AFCS system. So when you're looking for that fine-tuned control where you're trying to take off or hover or land, and you don't want the AFCS system fighting against you, you're going to press and hold that trim release. There are also binds that are available in Hype Operations Center for people that don't have a convenient way to press trim release while they're trying to manipulate their controls and while they want that fine-tuned acuity. There are latching binds, and those would be available in the Hype Operations Center. If you've got a trim hat on your controls, either on your cyclic or on your collective. In my case, I have one on both. You're going to want to have a 4-way cyclic beep trim set up. And the beep trims are increase rotor longitudinal trim or decrease rotor longitudinal trim, increase rotor lateral trim, and decrease rotor lateral trim. We'll look at some examples of when those would be used when we talk a little bit more about the AFCS system and the upper modes. But those are additional keybinds that you're going to want to have. On the top of the collective here, you can see there's also a hat called AP trim, and that's going to be your 4-way collective beep trim. Those binds are increase autopilot N1 reference, decrease autopilot N1 reference, rudder trim left, and rudder trim right. And again, when we get into talking about the upper modes and some of the different controls there, it'll make sense why we would want to have a separate set of collective beep trims and cyclic beep trims. If you have additional keybinds available to you, there are 4 different bindings that will make life easier when you're flying this. We'll talk about AP backup on. That default is autopilot on for the Microsoft bind. That's a multi-press switch. So the first press, it's going to engage autopilot 1, autopilot 2, and backup. On the center console, you'll see those indications. That's part of the startup procedure to engage those. Pressing it twice will select altitude heading and indicated airspeed, so it engages or turns those functions on for your upper modes. The next one's AP backup cut. This is toggle disengage autopilot for the Microsoft native keybind. Pressing that once is going to disengage AP1 and AP2, and pressing it twice is going to disengage your backup autopilot. That's part of the test in your startup process as well. The next one is autopilot off. Pressing once will cancel your selected upper modes. When we talk about the upper modes, it'll make sense. If you have your upper modes engaged and you're at the point where you're going to start to change direction, or you want to start taking manual control of the helicopter up once you're starting to get close to resuming the end of your flight for your landing, you can have the AP off or the autopilot off, Microsoft keybind bound, to cancel those selected upper modes and just turn it back to the native AFCS system. If you press that and hold it for 2 seconds, you can also clear your pre-selections or the bugs that you've set on the main pilot MFD. And the final one is the AP GTC button. This is bound to Microsoft Flight Sim's toggle auto hover keybind. Pressing that once is going to engage GTC mode, and a double press will engage hover mode. There are also keybinds available in Hype Operations Center that you could do a single button press to engage hover. But the native or the default is 1 button, first press for GTC, and press it twice to engage the hover mode. So we've jumped over into the interior of the helicopter with it running now, and in my haste to put this together, I almost forgot. There are 2 additional binds that you need for the H160. Landing gear retraction can be accomplished by flipping this switch up by toggling it with your mouse, or your toggle landing gear MSFS keybind works. Additionally, you're going to want to make sure that you have your left and right brakes bound with the default MSFS binds for taxiing in the H160. So we're just about all ready to go here. We're going to start to taxi, and we want to make sure of 2 things. We want to make sure our nose wheel is unlocked and our parking brake is off. Then we can begin taxiing here. We're going to specifically talk about trim release, but in the meantime, let's taxi over to the runway to get ready to take off. I've also displayed the flight controls over on the left-hand side so that you can see some of the different things as we do our controls explanation on trim release and such. So I think I got a little closer to the helicopter. Don't tell anybody. So taxiing on the ground, a little bit of collective will get you moving forward. The instructions or the manual say that, you know, a little bit of cyclic turned into the wind, but you really don't need much input there as well. So we will talk a little bit more about trim release while we're in flight and doing some things. But while we're on the ground, I just want to take this opportunity to show you on the center console here. You can switch to, or you'll have the VMS displayed, but you can switch to the controls visualizer. And some people don't know that this is available for you to see, but you've got your user input, the sim output, and then what SAS and SEMA are outputting here. And as we move around, we can see that the AFCS system is not really engaged in doing anything. So as I move my rudder pedals for the yaw input, those are matched up. And as I move my cyclic stick, you can see spring override is engaged once I get outside of my dead zone. And if I pull trim release, you'll see that that shows up here as well. So I'm going to take off and get into a little bit of a manual hover here, and I want to point out a couple things as we do that, but I have this up so that you can visualize what's going on with the controls. So trim release, I'm going to push in, or I'm going to pull that. I have mine bound to a pinky switch, so when I say pull it, I'm actually pushing the button in with my pinkies by pulling that. As I start to add in some collective, you can see the AFCS system. I did not move my rudder pedals at all. I'm adding collective in, and the AFCS system has done its part to keep the helicopter in the pointed in the direction that I took off from. You can see the sim output from green there. It's giving the sim that additional. When I pull trim release again, now I have that fine-tune control here as well. So recommended that when you're taking off or landing, if you want to have that fine-tune control of your departure, and you know you don't want to feel like the AFCS system is fighting against you, that you would do that. Now, if AFCS is engaged and I release that trim, because my speed is not over 30 knots, I can actually provide some input, and it's the AFCS system is listening to me, and I'm able to do that. So you'll find that in hover mode, you're able to, I shouldn't say in hover mode, when the selection on the tablet says follow-up trim is enabled for hover, you'll be able to provide cyclic input here and have the AFCS system actually take that. So if we're going to come in and land, I want to have that full minute, finite control. I'm going to actually bring us over a little bit to the right here. Probably not go forward too much, but I'm visualizing down to the ground as I come in, and I'm able to provide a little bit of extra input here without the system fighting against me. Lowering the collective a little bit, coming in just nice and slow. Slow that a little bit. I usually add too much in here, but let a little more collective out. We're going to come down to the ground here. Hopefully not bounce too hard. So we're going to talk about the autopilot upper modes right now, and I want to show you here that these can be manipulated on the center console here using your mouse. So you would rotate to change the values and press the button to input them. You can also, on the tablet over here, engage some of these modes from here. And I also have bindings set for altitude hold, indicated airspeed hold, heading hold, and there is not a bind that I found for to engage the nav hold, but this the button on the MFD, you can actually figure out which button this is, and I have that indicated as well. So I have a hat that I have binds for, and clicking it to the left will engage my indicated airspeed hold. The speed that was bugged was down at 120, so now the helicopter is going to slow up to that. The upper mode for indicated airspeed hold is taking over and adjusting the pitch and the collective input of the aircraft to do that. We can also turn that off with that same button. So indicated airspeed hold is now engaged. I'm going to engage the altitude hold. This is going to hold us at 5,800 feet. I did that with that keybind as well, or you can click on the screen. I'm also going to engage the heading hold. So a couple things happened if you watched the screen here. As we engage those different modes, this is a graphical indication of your cyclic beep trim settings and your collective beep trim settings. I can make adjustments to my indicated airspeed hold amount, so basically adjusting this bug on the airspeed hold by coming down to the indicated airspeed knob and adjusting it, or using the beep trim on my cyclic to lower that indicated airspeed value. Same with heading. I can come down here, find the heading, and rotate that to turn the aircraft, or I can use the beep trim on my cyclic to continue changing that heading. My altitude bug right here at 5750 can also be adjusted, and this is used with the collective beep trim altitude up and down. Now we did engage heading mode, but I also have a function that will couple with the navigation mode. And if this nav button is displaying information from your flight management system, so we have a waypoint in the GTN 750, this gives us the ability to couple. And the button that I have bound will actually hit this couple button. You can see it turns green. We've got our course line and our bearing that we need to, and now this is switched over to nav mode. So you can do nav mode from up here, or if this is selected on nav and you have a flight plan loaded, clicking couple will actually engage that. You can also click decouple up here on the dash, or in my case, you could go back over, hit the button that you have bound again, or you can come to the tablet and hit heading mode here. I want to talk about GTC, so ground speed hold, and why you might want to use that. So let's say that we were flying over the water, trying to match speed with a ship that we were going to land on, and we wanted to continue to hold our ground speed and not be in a hover. So pressing that GTC keybind button once, we're only holding our ground speed. It's going to pitch for the speed that we selected. We have control over our height. Adding collective will bring us down. Increasing collective will bring us up. And then if you see cyclic beep trim down on the tablet there, we've got the ability to change the bearing of the helicopter as we're continuing to fly, and then we can actually speed ourselves up. So you can beep trim yourself to match the speed of a ship that you're trying to land on that's moving, or if you want to just travel across an area with the helicopter flying on a track, you can adjust the heading that you're flying as well. And GTC on the collective beep trim, you've got your yaw here. Pressing that is going to actually yaw the helicopter a little bit more. So you can set yourself up in a nice matched speed situation with a moving ship as you come in and prepare to do your landing. That's what the ground speed hold mode would do. Now, double clicking that button will actually bring you into hover mode. We've got an altitude hold that's on. We can also engage a cruise height hold. Once you've stopped, your height is now locked in. And that's using our radar altitude right now to hold us at about 340 feet. I want to draw your attention to the modes here on the GPS, or on the tablet here. We've got GTC hold yaw, so you can rotate yourself using your collective beep trim. You can lower your cruise height using this beep trim, and we'll slowly start to descend. You can also beep trim yourself so that you get yourself hovering over a specific target. So we can go over into an external view. It's going to be a little bit loud, but I'll try and zoom out a little bit here. And as we beep trim to the right, pressing and holding or hitting it repeatedly, you'll see that the helicopter actually transitions a little bit over to the right. It's moving that point that we're hovering over by doing that. If we want to come out of our auto hover mode and we press that button again, we can actually see that we still have cruise height engaged, but if we begin to provide some input, trim releasing, and get ourselves started on a little bit of a takeoff, as slow or as fast as we want to. Alt A, if we want to adjust our altitude, our Alt A value is 2580. If we want to switch over and start to acquire that altitude, pressing that button is now going to start our vertical speed climb up to that value that we set. And now we have an altitude acquire set, and our vertical speed is here. We can beep trim that with our collective beep trim down here. So if we want to decrease the number, our vertical speed in feet per minute, we can use the collective beep trim up or down to do that. So it's going to continue on this course, and our altitude acquire just did. Since we're close enough. So this is going to level out about 2560, 2580, and our altitude hold is now engaged. We'll engage heading hold in the current direction that we're at. I think I showed you guys when heading hold is engaged, you can adjust that left or right using your cyclic beep trim, and then you can do your indicated airspeed hold as well, and adjust the beep trim to go up or down from there. So we talked about a couple of the key binds for the AP cut and AP off and turning autopilot on. So if I wanted to take over control of this helicopter, I could turn the AP off, and you can see all of my upper modes on the center of the MFD here have gone away. If I wanted to turn those back on and engage them again, I can do AP on, and that's going to do that. Part of the emergency procedures, if you needed to, you could press AFCS is disengaged, the backup system is actually taking over. So you don't have the full upper modes anymore. Pressing that AP cut a second time actually disables everything. So there is no AFCS, no SAS system. Autopilot 1 and 2 and backup are both or all disengaged at that point. I'm going to turn those back on, and I'm actually going to engage the upper modes again to get us back on course. I hope you all found this walkthrough of the different features and functionality helpful, and I hope that if you were struggling to understand the AFCS system, how trim release can affect your flying, and the function and usefulness of some of the upper modes with the Helionix system that this helped you. Again, this is still the preview release of the H160. I have to say thanks again to Hype Performance Group for giving me an opportunity to preview it and begin to make some of this content. I hope that you guys are as excited about this helicopter and everything that it has to offer in the sim as I am. I have had a blast flying it around, and while the H145 and H160 can be a little bit complicated when you are first starting out to understand the relationship between the controls and why trim release is so important and what some of those different settings can do, I'm hoping that this helped you and you can get as much enjoyment out of this as I have with all of the Hype Performance Group products. So thanks again for sticking through this. If you're here up until this point, I hope that I earned your subscription and that you find the time to come and check out one of my Twitch live streams and maybe follow me over on TikTok, because a lot of times when we go live on Twitch, we're also live streaming on TikTok as well. It's a great time. We have a lot of good interaction, and I look forward to seeing you guys there.